Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We have the latest monthly report for Squadron 42, so let us break it down. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. And if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So, kicking off with the AI content team, they made a strategic decision to concentrate resources on a single location, which brought several benefits, like it being a more iterative review process, as they now meet with leadership and receive detailed feedback, allowing them to raise the quality bar to a shippable level. Now this is pretty interesting, as they are able to get all the feedback they need to get their work to a shippable state, and they can move from one piece of work to the next, getting the AI content team's work all to that level of being shippable. So great to hear progress like this is getting made, and although it doesn't mean things will just be ready to ship, it does mean that as they move through their work, they will learn more and more what shippable means for the quality level and get quicker at getting their features to that point as well. So great news there, very happy to hear that. The team also progressed with the hangar mess hall locations. For the hangar, they introduced an overseer behavior who will dynamically supervise and interact with their supervisors, deck crew, ordnance officers and fuelers, while simultaneously interacting with datapads. And for the landing officer, they drew inspiration from aircraft carrier takeoff and landing videos to create realistic deck crew actions. Now for the mess hall, scripted AI was added alongside random systemic interactions, which allows the team to implement more interesting actions that might be challenging to achieve with a solely systemic approach. For example, NPCs watching and reacting to a TV show. And looking ahead, the team will move on to various ship interior locations. As we know, they are creating a living, breathing, functional environment with the Idris, basically just plonking the player into the middle of it all, so you will see the crew going about their business as if you weren't even there. Now moving on to the AI features team, they improved the quality of various behaviors, including unrestraining, and now AI can wake up while restrained and call out for others to come and help them, and this will be very interesting when capturing NPC bounties in the persistent universe who have friends close by. They also developed interfaces and behaviors for AI-driven vehicles equipped with specific radar gadgets, which enables the AI to locate enemies when they hide or move out of sight, and hopefully this is all systemic, using the radar to locate players because they follow the signatures. Work also continued on close combat encounters to ensure the AI locomotion looks good, which included integrating new performance capture animations. Environmental searches were also improved to allow NPCs to evaluate their environment and then attempt to flank the target using cover locations. Plus the team improved combat behavior that allows NPCs to use med pens to heal themselves. It is going to be a lot of fun when all of these AI behaviors and traits and abilities are all functioning as intended in the persistent universe. Hopefully once the replication layer is separated we will see this. I assume this is happening somewhat soon, but either way we should get to see many of these behaviors in an Arena Commander mode one day soon as well. Now the team also continued to implement buddy AI, like enabling the buddy to crouch and move between cover, plus buddies now have improved reviving, acknowledging when the player is downed or unconscious. And finally on the animation side, polish was done on a variety of features including grenade throwing, healing, unrestraining, crouched sharp turns, and weapon reloads. And it is nice to hear that more refinement is coming to animations, making the characters ourselves, the players and NPCs less janky, more realistic will be a big improvement. So moving on to the AI tech team, they finalized work to allow NPCs to transition between EVA and environments with gravity. This is what they started working on last month. And now NPCs can enter and exit a ship through the airlock or hatches by vaulting over ledges. The team also implemented simple behaviors and assignments for entering and exiting ships, which compute a path to a location and utilize the most suitable usable to finish the transition. So I suppose pathing to avoid certain routes, it seems, like what we have seen with avoiding environmental hazards. It'll be a similar principle when it comes to airlocks and getting out of a ship the quickest. The AI tech team also picked up on ongoing work on Boids, and currently they are working on 2D Boid agents, such as rodents, that will move across terrain within the confines of the nav mesh and next they will look into Boyd's playing animations while moving or idling. I really hope they give us that classic rats in the cellar mission like we see on the Elder Scrolls series, or even rats or rodents infesting a cargo bay like the Reclaimer. That would be a very cool mission. Now, various features and AI systems received improvements as well. For NPCs pushing trolleys, the team optimized the controller and stabilized the system, and for NPC perception of audio stimuli, AI tech began using new functionality exposed by the audio team, which will utilize the room system to understand if an audio event should be received. So very clever to use the room system this way. It might be depending on the condition of the room, whether the audio should or should not propagate through that room, amongst many other variables, I'm sure. Now, for the AI vehicle team, they focused on supporting level design throughout July, providing significant impact, especially for the flight chapters. Further work was done to integrate the new vehicle aiming system into AI, and NPC pilots will make use of this new system just like the players, which they say has resulted in significantly improved AI accuracy, and although this will require balancing, they now have much more control than ever before, so really happy to hear this. Finally, for the team, improvements and changes were made to atmospheric flight, and now when in atmosphere, AI fly with controlled surfaces, and dogfighting reverts to a more traditional get-on-your-six style of combat, with the team wanting to give the players more opportunities to get behind the AI, so now enemies will occasionally make mistakes and break away, leaving windows that they didn't before, which they say results in a far more enjoyable experience. Of course, I'm sure when it comes to the PU and Squadron, they will balance the variety of enemies, some being more competent, some being less, but this is going to be great to see and experience. Having the atmospheric combat more like real-world combat is going to be so much fun to fight in atmosphere solo or as a group. Cannot wait to try this. Plus, it is great to hear that this system is getting hooked up for NPCs, which means it will not be too long until it comes into the player's hands, most likely via an experimental mode in Arena Commander. Now, for the animation team, it says they moved from alpha work to beta work, which involved improving the visual results of reloads and takedowns, as well as basic idles for weapons and knives. So the animation team are now moving from alpha to beta, so that's pretty huge, and as part of that they are finally getting some idle animations for weapons. That will be very nice in the PU. The team also continued working on background and systemic AI, taking a larger role in driving visual fidelity. They also kicked off reload animations for enemy spec op weapon types and began implementing 2 high-intensity combat fights. For the facial side, the team continued to develop final quality facial animations for various cinematic scenes alongside supporting new incoming lines for combat and social AI. There is a lot of work getting pushed to a final state. Words like final quality, alpha to beta, shippable state. It is really exciting to read this. Let us hope we hear more from the teams getting to this point as well, as they are really making a solid push. Now let's move on to the audio team. They continued their ongoing task of tagging generic animations with new Foley sound effects, which will add immersion game-wide, including non-gameplay scenes such as cinematics, where generic animations are reused. The team also designed and implemented new weapon sound effects, which they say is a significant step to improving the sound across all FPS features. Also, several gadgets received their initial audio pass in pursuit of having sound on all interactive devices across the campaign. This is music to my ears. Getting audio properly hooked up in the Persistent universe is one thing that will drastically improve the overall experience and keep that immersion, because there's nothing worse than audio not triggering when it's supposed to just rip you out of that experience. So I'm happy to hear that more of this new stuff is coming in. The audio team also assessed the workload for the planned flight experience improvements, identifying areas of tech that need developing or improvement, and alongside this, the technical sound team will soon begin writing up a new vibration system to amplify the tension and immersion of dogfights and large space battles to greatly improve the overall flight experience. There is so much to do to bring the flight audio experience to that next level, providing those audible cues for when your ship is under strain, getting shot or feeling the pressures. Not to mention, if you don't know, they do plan on having a device in your ship that technically creates the sound of other ships and environmental surrounding sounds to provide that cinematic situational awareness. However, if that device gets damaged, stops working, or gets removed, then space will go silent until it is repaired or replaced. So this is all work to get to that point, but again, creating that soundscape that is accurate and not buggy or missing is very important. Time was also spent reviewing all existing ambience work in prep for the next stage of development, and currently all base ambience is implemented, which will be refined with smaller nuanced details. They also completed the sound design for the large turrets that players can use during an early portion of the game. The cannon effects were redesigned to sound more powerful and beefier, while the Gatling turrets received a new barrel spin effect. So lots of great refinement work going on there from the audio team, and it does sound like we will be getting an update on this new Claudius system, which is their new sound system that they've been developing for a couple of years, which should heavily improve the audio of the game in all areas. Anyway, moving on to the gameplay features team, they began work on the in-game SimPod, where players can load into different simulations to practice their skills, with the team saying this is a fairly involved process where we need to teleport the player into a new environment, change their loadout and status, change the game mode and game rules, and then restore everything back again when the sim has finished. It is not like the Matrix. If you die in the sim, you don't die in the real world. So this means when playing Squadron, the single player campaign, if you have some downtime, you will be able to jump into the SimPod and load up Arena Commander, or maybe more of an offline mode designed for the campaign, for the being in the UEE Navy, where you can get some practice or training in, and then when you're done, if it's mission time, you can hop back out again, back into the campaign. And the work done here to get this functioning for Squadron will certainly be a big step in getting the same process working in the persistent universe, so really happy to see this being progressed. Now, a pass was done on formation flying based on feedback from the ongoing mission reviews, which led to various changes, including how players join the formation, the way it flies to match the orientation of the leader, and numerous UI improvements. And finally, for the gameplay features team, progress on the minimap was made, which includes culling markers outside of the camera view and clipping important markers to the view edge, plus new markers for dangerous objects, such as grenades and missiles, were added to the minimap and star map as well. And I suspect that this will be part of the same system they use for the command map, or the globe, command and control globe, allowing players to watch a battle unfold on this globe, seeing the threats and issuing commands to the various members of their fleet. Also great to hear more functionality coming to the star maps, on all the maps really, and I suspect that CIG will be waiting until CitizenCon to reveal what the new star map looks like. Now, onto the vehicle features team. Alongside the level design team, they worked to close out various chapters and improve how the game plays and feels. One of the key areas is the vehicle aiming and gunnery system, with the team exploring options to make aiming more challenging, which is partly driven by the slightly overpowered auto gimbal system. So new aiming modes, dynamically zooming on targets, and other elements will make the combat experience more engaging. And it will be really interesting to see how these updates make their way in for ship combat. Cannot wait to test them, see how they all fit together, and hopefully it is in the direction where it needs to be going. Now, last month, Control Surfaces was finalized, with the team making UI changes to show additional information, including stall speed, selected mode, and thruster and control surface. Also, further control options will be considered following playtesting. And I really hope we're not waiting too long to see their new flight model and system with control surfaces, flaps, all that kind of stuff. This is a big system that involves a lot of moving parts, so I do suspect we won't see it until CitizenCon. I'm sure they'll give us an update there. Whether it's finished by CitizenCon is unlikely, because as I say, there is a lot to it. Now, the vehicle features team also began supporting the physics team with physical damage tech, which requires a lot of lower level vehicle system refactors, and this will update vehicles to use much more modern systems in the engine and work far better with physical damage and other recent features. It is so nice to hear about all of these much needed, long awaited features finally beginning to roll out, and I can assure you that the game that we are playing now on the Persistent Universe will be changing drastically when this comes along, in all areas of the game, and should take it from this buggy alpha with a lot of inconsistencies across the board to something far more polished and refined. Now, work on the MFDs, or multifunction displays, was focused on scanning, which they say is by far the most complex MFD screen, showing information from the scanned targets and allowing players to find out about its internal components by utilizing a deeper scan, which is now working as intended. And this will certainly open up far more information that we can gain by scanning ships, especially for ships with more advanced scanners, giving them more purpose in the verse, like the Cutter Scout perhaps. Turret seats are currently being converted to use the new MFD system as well, which will also have a modified version of the vehicle self-status MFD to show more turret-relevant information. I presume like damage as well, giving the player a chance to see that their turret is damaged and about to be destroyed unless they get out of there. Another smaller UI element worked on was the refuel and rearm terminal located at some landing pads, and this required a few new UI tech elements, which were resolved. And finally, the vehicle loadout terminal is now largely functional, allowing players to see all of the items available in their profile and equip them onto their ships in the Idris hangar, with the team currently working on UI to finalize how the terminal will look. I wonder if we'll be able to gather up items that we find on our travels in the campaign and bring them back to then get them used. A bit like you see with Mass Effect and the weapons, that would be kind of cool. Now for the gameplay story team, they completed the setup for the air traffic controller operator seat, following this by updating all of their scenes that involved operator seats to work with the approved metrics, with the team saying this was quite a big undertaking, but it was great to see so many scenes that have been blocked for a long time finally get to a finished state. So yet another team finishing their work, allowing multiple scenes to get to a finished state, so much more getting completed. Now for the level design team, their main focus was interstitials, including bug fixing and maintenance, and with all of the team's scene content now in game, they moved on to ensure scenes reached the expected quality threshold and addressing specific details. Now this, they say, is a significant undertaking which requires working closely with the cinematics team, the gameplay story team, and many character teams to iron out various issues. And outside of scenes, progress was made on fail states. For example, punching a colleague will see the players taken to the brig and getting dressed down by a superior. This is pretty funny. I will certainly have a separate save to literally just troll the other members of the Idris and see what happens. I will certainly take that to the limits. Finally, for the team, work continued on save and checkpoints as well. Now, moving on to the narrative team, they prepared for 2 upcoming performance capture shoots with a lot of reviews to ensure that dialogue is correct for the tutorials, instructions, and to help get the various characters in alignment with the gameplay experience. Plus, with many of these new recording sessions, meaning that much of the placeholder dialogue will be replaced by the actual performances, rather than the performances by fellow team members. And additionally, the team supported localization, assisting with subtitle validation, which is an ongoing process. For the UI team, they iterated on display layouts for Squadron 42's flyable vehicles to ensure that they all look and feel unique, but retain that ease of use built on throughout the project. The concepts for the second main vehicle in the game are now signed off and ready to be added, and UI are working closely with the vehicle artists on the cockpit for the third. So this will be relating to the new manufacturer-specific HUD UI, as Aegis was the first that we saw, with it impacting the Gladius, the main ship that the player uses, and I imagine the second or third ones could be Anvil, Drake, RSI, or even the Vanduul UI. But we don't know until they show us. We have seen a concept for Drake, but I know Anvil and RSI are heavily used manufacturers in the campaign as well, so we will see what that looks like. The multi-tool UI was also updated to make it much simpler and cleaner, while improvements were made to the augmented reality markers and health widget, as well as updating several interaction menus and continuing to develop one of the key 3D displays in the game. The core tech team improved building blocks' runtime performance, as the recent addition of new UI assets led to an increase in size and complexity. They also continued adding new features to the bindings and building blocks, including a color picker and stepped lines for the developers, and this will just provide more option and customization when designing UI. This isn't referring to players being able to pick the colors they want, as I imagine that a lot of the UI and HUDs will be limited by the manufacturers, offering maybe a select amount of colors or maybe not any. We'll see. And finally, for the UI team, they worked alongside graphics to develop a new internal map system to help players navigate the game's complex cities, planets, and capital ships, with the team saying, "This will be a real game changer for players, and we're really excited by its progress." Now, last but not least, we have the visual effects team, who continue to focus on the fire propagation system, with the shader improvements from the previous month now added, bringing greatly overall visual quality. The artists also created new fire particles to work in harmony with the shaders, and finally further improvements were made to gas cloud lightning effects, including a new option to allow lightning to follow a moving vehicle. So that was this month's Squadron 42 monthly report. As with anything that goes into Squadron, the vast majority of the work for the campaign will come over to the persistent universe. So reading about the work on the flight model, AI, MFDs, and so much more is really exciting for me, as there is a lot of progress in those areas that will drastically impact the persistent universe. And as mentioned, terminology like moving from alpha to beta state, final quality, shippable states, it's so refreshing to hear this. They are making incredible progress with Squadron, and it will not be long until many more aspects of the campaign get completed, with not just much of that work coming to the PU, but many of those teams transitioning over to the persistent universe as well. And I really hope to see more of an official announcement or an update, a progress update. Any of that will be great at CitizenCon this year, so fingers crossed we get a new update. Anyway, great progress as always, and here is to getting Squadron 42 completed. But with that said, if you do appreciate my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. We will certainly be talking about many aspects that we've just read about here. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.